Hey everybody, I'm proud to have on the show today Dr. Future from the hit radio show Future Quake on the Revelations Radio Network, as well as WENO here in Nashville, Tennessee. Dr. Future and I were both speakers at the Last Days Conference this year in Nashville, and the talk that he did there was probably one of the most discussed talks among the audience as well as the presenters, and we all thought it was just fascinating information and really top-notch research, which Dr. Future is famous for, I guess, is probably better. So today we're going to go over that information for you as well that we're not able to attend the conference. Okay, so let's get started. Why don't you maybe introduce a little bit about your talk, or just get right into it and just take it away.
Okay. Well, yeah. Let me jump into this a little bit. This is a topic, and I guess if I could best introduce it, I call it the role of sorcery and drugs in opening the Last Day Spirit Portal. That's how it was presented at the Last Days Conference this past April in Nashville. But it really was initiated based on a chance story we reviewed on Future Quake, probably around the end of 2008, regarding this chemical DMT, which I will talk about here more so in just a minute. But it had some mysterious history to it, not only as a hallucinogenic chemical or psychoactive chemical, but its religious connotations to it. And this really intrigued me, and it was an area I had not really looked into. I've not been one that had a history of partaker of drugs, even alcohol. So I really didn't know much about this material other than what's known to the general public. That led to some more research on my behalf and more interest in doing sort of a foundational show back around January 2009. I invited Dr. Lynn Marzulli to sit in as part of our discussion of my research on DMT and similar drugs. And at various times, I've taken an interest in furthering and advancing my research in this area. And I'm getting more and more convinced all the time that this is an area that all people need to be aware of, particularly the Christian community, because we've been very lax in understanding what goes on in this concept of sorcery and the role of drugs and the spiritual implications itself. And that's really the context of my talk. So if you don't mind, I'm going to proceed further. And Chris, please feel free to interject, ask questions whenever you like along the discussion as we go here.
Okay, great.
The whole purpose of this talk, is just to give you a little heads up here, is to educate, first of all, on some history of sorcery and drugs, in spirit contact, in use in spirit contact, both from secular and biblical records. Try to explain the impact of sorcery activities in the modern era as well, too, which is another fascinating topic. And from there, reveal some current developments in the revival of interest in sorcery today. And then proceed to propose some hypotheses on how these activities can actually fulfill Bible prophecy. And conclude with some suggested activities today that I think may fulfill the model, the prophetic model that I will propose, and then close by recommending some action to actually address this threat. So moving into the body of it, I first need to clarify some definitions for people of some terms that they may not be familiar with. The concept of the word or term theurgy, and I'm going to give you a definition here. It's the practice of rituals, sometimes seen as magical in nature, performed with the intention of invoking the action or presence of one or more gods, especially the goal of uniting with the divine, achieving henosis or perfecting oneself. And henosis relates to having a union with what is fundamental in reality, the one, the source, or monad. So it's a key purpose of conjuring these particular spirits to achieve a desired spiritual end state. Now, there's two types of this. One is called invocation, and invocation is best defined as a form of possession. And this is where an individual's normal personality is replaced by another. This would be the kind of thing you would see when channeling occurs, when you see this spirit comes on someone. Another definition is to draw a spirit within one's body, or within one's own body. Even shamans do this. Medicine men, shamans, Wicca practice this activity. The other approach is evocation, and that is calling or summoning a spirit, demon, god, or other supernatural agent is the definition. And even Aleister Crowley, who is well known to anyone who studies the areas of the occult, he has his own definition to distinguish between the two. He says to invoke is to, quote, call in, just as to evoke is to call forth. In invocation, the macrocosm floods the consciousness, so the outer spirit world comes in you. In evocation, the magician, having become the macrocosm, creates the microcosm. So, in his view or understanding, the magician becomes the controlling universe and then is able to summon forth gods. So you will hear invocation and evocation all the time, but invocation, they come in, they sort of take you over, they speak through you, for example. Evocation is when they actually appear or manifest themselves in some form before you. Another term people need to understand is what this word sorcery means. Sorcery, if you look in a simple definition, for example, in Wikipedia, it's called the manipulation of magic. But I'm very interested in what the ancient world says, and particularly the Bible. In the Old Testament, the Hebrew word, it's keshef, I believe it's the pronunciation, and it relates to sorcery or witchcraft. In the New Testament, there are actually two words that are used. One is mageo, and that means to be a magician or to practice magical arts. But the one I'm really interested in the most is the term pharmakeia. And pharmakeia is the use or the administering of drugs involved in sorcery, magical arts, and often in connection with idolatry and fostered by it. So drugs are a key connection, and obviously you see the word pharmakeia and its connection to pharmacy and what we know is administering of drugs. And the last term I just want to make sure people are clear on is this term shamanism. And probably a simple definition is shamans are intermediaries between the human and spirit worlds. So these are a very, very ancient form of people that do this particular function itself. Now, just to give you a couple examples that we have in the ancient literature where these events occurred, if you go back and look at the book of First Enoch. Now, First Enoch, if your listeners are not aware of that, is a book that some consider writing that is worthy of consideration as being factual and accurate. It is quoted in the Bible, in the book of Jude, and elsewhere in the Bible, which gives it very special consideration. The book of Enoch has been kept in the canon of the Ethiopian church since its earliest days, one of the earliest segments of the church body. So it's something that's considered in great esteem. Some portions of it, particularly as you get later sections that may have been written at a later date, cause more concern and conjecture. But anyway, First Enoch is held in great esteem, and it talks a good bit about what happened when these angels, 200 angels, came down to cohabitate with women in the days before the flood. And this event is alluded to in Genesis chapter 6, as well as, again, in Jude and a few other places in the New Testament. But a couple of these people, and these are in foreign tongues, so I'm not often able to completely pronounce them correct, but Semjaza and Amoros were two of these leaders. In fact, Semjaza is considered possibly the ringleader of these angels who, as the Bible says, left their first estate and came down to cohabitate with women. It says that later they were judged for this at the time of the flood and were actually imprisoned in a special place called Tartarus. But one of the things that the book of Enoch says that they did was they taught mankind enchantments and root cuttings. Now, enchantments is a key word as used in the Bible because it relates to using this drug-related sorcery, and root cuttings are basically using the kind of things like you associate or connotate with classical witchcraft, where you get these roots and cut them out and make potions and spells and things like this. So it suggests that there was an effort made by the dark forces to take the initiative to contact mankind and to introduce them and teach them these techniques. Now, one of the most venerated godlike characters in all of recorded history is Isis. Isis, the goddess of Egypt, which was a goddess whose worship was continued throughout the Greek and Roman era as well. She was probably the most robust religious figure to maintain support even as new kingdoms came along. She was the goddess of magic, and again followed in Egypt and later in Greece and Rome. In the story, the main story involving Isis is that she was actually married to her brother Osiris. And Osiris was confronted by Set, or Seth. Seth is the correct term. And in their battle, Seth was able to destroy him and actually cut him up and send him away. And Isis was able to actually use her magic techniques to gain extra power from Ra and others as a means by which to reassemble Osiris and basically rescue him from the underworld of death. So she was able to get him from underground in the underworld, bring him back, and then, of course, helped birth Horus, which was really a reincarnation